Hey guys, welcome back to the sub-D modeling training series for Cinema 4D. In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about pinching. This is an issue that will often come up depending on what you're trying to model, and it can be very annoying when trying to solve it. So what we're going to be modeling is this object right here. And I know you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, that looks pretty straightforward and pretty simple to do, right? Okay, yes it is. However, there is a part of this object that's going to cause some problems, and that's what we're going to be dealing with. So as you can see, there is no pinching anywhere in this mesh. Everything is nice and straight and even. There's no artifacts anywhere. Everything looks really good. However, I guarantee you that if you were to try to model this, you're going to encounter some pinching. I guarantee it. So that's what we're going to be dealing with here. All right, so the first thing I want to do is we're going to create a polygon object, and I'm going to give it a segment value of 2. We're going to make it editable, and I'm just going to go into edge mode. I'm just going to quickly shape this out what I want it to look like. So this edge is going to go up. We'll extrude that out a little bit. This edge over here will be extruded a little bit more. Okay, and then I want to do a UL, the loop selection. And it's going to be those edges around the outside, and we'll just extrude those down. Okay, so I'm going to grab the knife tool in loop mode. And we're going to make some, I'll tell you what, let's first of all, let's put this in a subdivision surface object. Now let's make some cuts here, and I need to pull this up above the grid just because the grid can be annoying sometimes. All right, so we'll go back to the knife object, make our cuts where we need them at. Doesn't have to be perfect right now. All right, and you can see this is way too rounded up here. So I'm going to make some additional control edges here and here. That way we get a really nice, slightly beveled edge right there. And we need to do the same down here as well. So we'll put one there, and we'll put another one there. All right, so there is our basic shape. However, we need to put a hole in it, and this hole needs to be extruded downward, but it needs to be cylindrical. So as seen here in the first one that I originally showed you, you can see that half of this extrusion is on the flat part of this object, and the other half of the extrusion is going up at an angle. So I'm going to create a circle spline. I've already got one here, but I might as well just go ahead and create a new one. So I'm going to create a new circle spline. We need to change the orientation of the spline. Pull it up. I'm going to make it a bright red color. We need to scale it down some. So I guess maybe let's try a value of, let's see, maybe 12 I think will be okay. I'll tell you what, let's go to 11, make it just a little smaller. All right, let's turn that off, go back to the polygon object. Now you can see here that we've got some edges that we can work with. So one thing that we could do, let's just go ahead and take the circle spline, change the intermediate point mode over to uniform, and take the value down to 1. That gives us an octagon shape. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 sides to this spline. And maybe we can work with that. Let's see what happens when we do it. So I'm going to take this object, this polygon object, I'm going to control, click, and drag down to the bottom and then hide it. This is just going to be a backup, because this one here is going to be the one that we're going to see the mistake with. And then we're going to use the backup in order to fix it. All right, now there's a couple of ways that we can do this. We can do the collapse command as I showed you before in a previous tutorial in this series, and then we can just bevel out the point and that will create the shape for us. Or we could just do some manual cutting. And also we could probably be working in symmetry mode as well with this. But for now, we'll just keep it the way it is. Sometimes you might be modeling something and you may not be able to use symmetry because one part on the other side of one of the planes might not be exact to the other side, and a symmetry would only mess that up. So for now, we'll just keep it the way it is. All right, so what I want to do is I want to go into polygon mode, and I want to select these polygons here. I'm going to grab the Extrude Inner tool. I'm going to click and drag to extrude those inward till they line up here on the top and the bottom, or almost line up. Let's try that again with our reference spline there. Go into point mode, and let's select these points over here, push them in. These points over here, they're on an angle, so we'll need to adjust them later, but we need to pull those in as well. Might as well go ahead and adjust them now. If you go to a side view, you can see by pulling them out to line them up, we've taken them off alignment with that angle, so we just need to push them down. Okay, and then this point here can be pushed in to line up there. This one can go down here. And we need to select those 2 points there. Need to center them out for the X value. Actually, that would be the size for the X. And push them down. And we've got a little bit of an issue here. And in order for us to have that really nice defined edge, right here, this edge right along there where the bend goes up, that angle, we had to create 2 additional loop cuts. And by doing that, we introduced more edges and points here for this circle. So what I want to do for now is I want to grab the slide tool, and let's just slide those points over to weld them. We're just welding them to the center point. Go back to the live selection. We can grab these points here, pull them in, scale them down. All right, that looks good. Now we've got some triangles down here. Might as well go ahead and slide and weld those to the center point. And this is something that we probably should have skipped doing in the beginning, but we needed that defined edge along there. All right, so if we turn the subdivision surface object back on, you can see now we've lost that nice defined edge that we had across there. So we're gonna have to put that back in at some point. Whether it's there at the beginning or whether we add it later, we need to redefine that edge again. So let's go back to polygon mode. We'll select those polygons there in the center and drag them down, and we'll just center out the Y value here for the size. And let's grab the knife tool, loop mode. We'll make a loop cut there to sharpen up that edge some. And we need to do an extrude inner down here to tighten that bottom part up some as well. All right, so there's the hole in our object. Go to a top view. I'm just going to take this circle spline and duplicate it and change the point mode back to adaptive. And then I'm going to scale it down. All right, so you can see our hole is lining up with the spline. That looks great. But the problem is that we still don't have our defined edge along there. If we make this one visible again. And if we push it over, you can clearly see the difference. This one over here is ramped up like a smooth ramp, whereas this one over here has a defined edge along there. So we need to put that edge into this one here. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we could do is we could try weighting. So I'm going to go over into edge mode, and I'm going to, let's see if we could do a loop selection. That's not working. Okay, so I'm going to select these edges along here that go down into the hole. We can select those edges there, and if we turn the subdivision surface object back on again, hold down the period key, and then click and drag, you can see now we've tightened up those corners. And okay, that looks pretty good, kind of, sort of, maybe. I don't know, that's not looking all that great to me. If we go to a top view though, look what happens. Let me turn that, oh, look at there. We've got some pinching. And now this looks more like, I don't know, like an eyeball shape rather than a circle. So obviously weighting is not going to work. So if we delete the weight tag, we know that's not going to work. So the next thing is we're just going to have to model this rather than try weighting. So we'll go to point mode, or you can be in edge mode, doesn't matter. I tend to work in point mode. And we're going to use the line mode for the knife tool. We're going to disable visible only. And I'm going to make 2 vertical cuts, one there and another one there. So we'll turn the surface, the subdivision surface object back on. We've got our nice pronounced edge there where it should be. That looks good. But once again, because we introduced those 2 control cuts, now we've got our eyeball shape back again, and it's being pinched. So this is the pinching that I'm talking about. Obviously, up to this point, everything's been going well. The hole looks good, but in order to get that nice defined edge along there, we had to introduce some more control cuts, and when we did, we got some pinching. So how do we solve this? Okay, well, obviously, like I said, weighting's not going to work. So the next thing that I tried was to move around some of these points. So let's turn let's see, which one do we want? We want that one there. Our reference spline, turn that back on. So what I did was I tried to take some of these points here and move them up some. Maybe try to position these points to where they're lining up. But you can see in order to get that to look, I don't know, we'll call that somewhat decent. Look at how the geometry looks. This point is way up beyond these other 2 here. And if we look at it like this, you can see it's actually created a crease there. So that's not going to work. Now if you look at it from a top view, it looks like the circle shape is coming back, but we've created that crease. So this is not going to work. So how do we solve this problem? Well, the only thing I know that works for me in a case like this is just more geometry. That's the only solution that I have found to this problem, is just adding more geometry. Now remember, when we first added our reference spline to use, it was an 8-sided spline. And that's what we used. And in most cases, an 8-sided spline will work just fine with you. As I've showed you in some of my previous tutorials in this series, using the segment value here, the intermediate points uniform and the number set to 1, that will give you plenty of geometry in most cases to make a cylindrical type hole. But in this case, it's just not enough. We need more subdivisions or more geometry. All right, so what we could do is we could delete this polygon object. Let's take our backup. And what we want to do is we want to grab this spline, and rather than having it with a number value of 1, which gives us 8 sides, we need to take it up to 3. So I know you're probably thinking, well, 3 seems awfully high. Why a value of 3? Why not just 2? Well, I've already tried 2, and while it did help, and the pinching wasn't as apparent as it was with a value of 1, it still needed a little more geometry. So I found that a value of 3 here for the reference spline gives us the value that we want. 2 just wasn't enough. Alright, so what I did was go into polygon mode. We want to select these polygons here in the middle. Turn this off again. Use the extrude inner, and we just want to extrude this in to about right there. We can always come back to it later. Go into point mode, and you can see that these points here need to be pulled over. We'll pull those over, and we've got 1, 2, 3 points areas here on the reference spline, but we've only got 2 points here to work with, so we'll have to make some additional cuts. So this point here, I'm just going to bring it in, line it up there, and these 2 points here, what we'll do is we need to go ahead and just we can weld them or just slide them over by holding control. We need to put all these back over to the center point again, like we did before. And this is just going to get this geometry out of the way for the moment. However, we will need to come back and make these cuts again. But for now, I'd rather just get them out of the way. And probably what we could have done is just selected the edges and then just do a stitch and sew, and that would have made it a whole lot easier rather than doing all these manually, but that's okay. Go to the knife tool, and we want to make a cut from here over to here and then out to the edge. I'm going to do the same here, like that. And now we can line up these points with the reference spline. Pull that one down a little bit. This one comes into the center. Back to the knife tool again. And we'll just line these up. Now this side over here is going to be a little tricky. And the reason for that is because it's up at an angle. So when we position our points, we're going to need to come back to a side view. In this case, it's the front view. But we will need to take them and line them up to make sure everything is angled properly. Otherwise, if it's not, then you're going to be getting some weird artifact and bulges in your mesh. Okay, so this point here will go into the center one. This one needs to come over. Now I know this can be a little tedious, making all of these cuts and placing all of the points where they need to be at. Alright, so we'll line this back up again. Alright, so there's the shape of our hole. We need to go over here to this side view, and we need to fix all of these edges. Obviously, you can see that they are way out of place, so we're going to need to fix those. So what I want to do is I want to select these two here, since they're in line with each other. And I want to zero them out for the size value for the X, also for the Y. And then we want to pull those down to where they are in line. Then we want to do the same for those 2 points there. Zero them out for the X. The Y is already zeroed out, so that's good. Pull those down. Do the same for those two. And we got this one right here. Pull that one down. All right, so now everything should be in line. That looks good. Go into polygon mode, grab the inside of that circle area there, extrude that down, center out the size value for the Y to flatten out the bottom. We'll need to make an extrude inner to sharpen it up a little bit. Grab the knife tool, loop mode, we'll make a cut up here around the top. Turn the subdivision surface object back on, and there we go. So we need to check it to make sure that it's lined up with our circle spline, so we just need to scale the circle spline back up. That looks good. All right, now the only thing we need to do now is just put in our sharp edge and tighten up that edge there. So we will grab the knife tool, line mode, visible only selected. I'm sorry, visible only unselected, because we want to be able to cut through the sides and everything here, because we're going to be doing this from a top view. And we want to make the two vertical cuts that we made before when we were using the 8-sided spline reference. So we're going to make one there, and we're going to make another one right there. All right, so if we turn subdivision surface object back on, we've got our really nice defined edge. It looks good, but when we look at it from the top, oh, we suddenly get just a little bit of pinching. Now you can see that just by using a reference spline that has more segments in it, we've alleviated most of that pinching. Now that we have more geometry, the pinching is still there, but it is nowhere near what it was before. So we could take and make some adjustments here. And what we could do is, let's turn that spline back on. So what we could do is we could take this center point area here, pull that up a little bit, just to make a little bit of an adjustment there. Could do the same here with this one. And now you can see we have alleviated most of that pinching. There's still a little bit of a gap there, but it's nowhere near what it was before. And now if we were to look at this, you can see that there's a little bit of a crease right there. And I believe that crease is still on the first object that I had, yeah. So you can see just a little bit of a crease depending on what angle you're looking at this from. If we were to look at that geometry, it looks the same as this one. So that is the workaround solution that I have found to this pinching issue in a case such as this, where you have an angled object and you're trying to extrude a round cylindrical hole into that where half of it is flat and the other half is up at an angle, but you want to maintain that nice defined edge there. Obviously, not having enough geometry is going to result in pinching. You can try weighting, adding more cuts, more control edges, but you saw it was causing the pinching and problems. So the only solution to this is just to add more geometry to it. All right, so I think that's going to wrap up this tutorial. There really isn't much more that we can do with this. This was an issue that I encountered a while back, and I tried different things to solve it. And the only solution to this is just adding more geometry. It was just an issue of not having enough. And we could probably go in and maybe add some more, but as you can see, there's already quite a bit of geometry already there. And if we were to add more, it's just going to complicate things even further. And I think that more than likely this is probably as good as it's going to get. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Maybe some of you have a better idea of how to solve this issue versus what I showed you here by just adding more geometry. So feel free to share your thoughts, let me know, make a video about it, make a tutorial, show me what you were able to come up with. But for now, this is the only solution that I'm aware of to solve this issue, is just adding more geometry to it. All right, guys, so as always, thank you for watching. I hope that this lesson has helped you, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial.